all of her life. At every turn, death has followed her, yet only taken those around her. At 6 years old, death stole her parents. At 9 years old, the gods in Kasame, Egypt. At 10 years old, Dr. Desmond Barrett. At 12, the man that tried to rape her in Khartoum. At 16, her entire second family of thieves in Ethiopia. Teacher, the bull, the poacher, the cattle slain in the drought she unwittingly caused in Kenya. Deluge, John. Every time, regardless of the circumstance, the loss has hurt. But this loss, the loss of her teammate, the one whom she called sister, is a loss she cannot bear. Jeangrey, she thinks, you were the best of us. X-Men past and present attend the gravesite rites of their fallen teammate, Jeangrey. As Ororo Munroe, the now 24-year-old Earthborn African sky goddess of storms and life, listens to the eulogy, she thinks back over the years of her friendship with Jean. She had met Jean once before, she tells Pedro. Years ago, after the goddess Ororo had summoned a rainstorm to satiate her worshippers in an African village near the Savage Land, the original X-Men had been thrown off course by the villainous, energy-manipulating mutant teenager, Deluge. Deluge had stolen the goddess's gentle rainstorm and amplified it into a violent thunderstorm. Deluge threatened to destroy the world, starting with Africa, and the goddess Ororo would not abide. It was during this battle that Jeangrey, the X-Men known as Marvelgirl, telepathically relayed Hank's plan for victory into goddess Ororo's mind, and she complied. The X-Men promptly returned to America. The goddess returned to Kenya, to her beloved Uzuri village deep in the great rift valley of Kilimanjaro. And there she remained, content amongst her children, until Professor Charles Xavier came beckoning. Today, almost 4 years later, Ororo watches Jean's fiancé, Scottsummers, the deputy leader of the X-Men known as Cyclops, as he offers his condolences to Jean's parents. Dr. Jeangrey and his wife accept her death, but they do not possess the faculty to understand the reasons why. Lalandra gives John's father her condolences and a gift. She calls it a hollow matrix globe. She explains that through her alien Shi'ar technology and science, whenever one touches the orb, they will feel the essence of Jeangrey's personality, her thoughts, and her emotions, and the 3D image within the orb shall react as Jean herself would. Later, after most of the mourners have finally left, Ororo approaches Jean's headstone, and she mourns heavily for her friend. For in villages all across East Africa, Ororo is known as the goddess of life, and thus she wishes there was more she could have done to save her friend. What would she not give to have died in her place? She misses her. Why, it feels like only yesterday when she first saw Jean again on Krakoa. Two hours have passed, and the stratojet has retraced its flight halfway around the globe, until finally the forsaken atoll called Krakoa Island looms full before them. Cyclops directs the team to split up into pairs, and 21-year-old Ororo, the new X-Men known as Storm, is paired with the youngest of the new recruits called Colossus, and Cyclops barks the team's orders at them. He reminds Storm of Zinja, and she detests his tone. It has been years since anyone dared to speak to her in such a manner. But for now, the goddess chooses to cooperate. And as each pair wait for their cues from Cyclops, arguments begin to emerge, who in reality are still simply strangers to each other.
If that was to be my first taste of mutant kind,
Storm admits out loud,
then I did not like it.
Soon, at Cyclops' command, the South Team, Nightcrawler and Sunfire jump from the plane. Next, East Team jumps, and before he can signal the North Team, Colossus eagerly jumps from the plane.
Colossus! No!
Storm screams as she instinctually jumps out of the jet after him.
You fool! You cannot fly!
She grabs her new teammate by his belt, and Storm summons a wind to bring them both gently to the ground. After chastising Colossus for his impatience, the pair notice something odd. Neither recalls seeing the temple before.
Come, Colossus,
Storm commands.
Let us begin our search there.
As they approach, the island attempts to assault the pair with an avalanche.
Quickly, Colossus!
Storm orders.
Perhaps we can still outrun it!
As the pair change their course and run for cover, the rocks also change their course, following close behind them.
If we cannot outrun this avalanche!
Storm cries.
Then we must stand our ground!
Colossus uses a tree as a makeshift bat to swat the boulders away, and Storm summons a gust of wind to blast the rocks and debris backwards and into the Pacific Ocean. Shortly after, each of the other pair of heroes have also spotted the odd temple, and they all convene outside of its mammoth tightly sealed doors. Storm and the X-Men easily burst through the doors, simultaneously using their mutant powers. Although Storm and the novice X-Men lack the finesse of their predecessors, so far, they certainly get an A for effort. Still slightly astonished by seeing each other's abilities for the first time, the young mutants step cautiously into the Stygian darkness and find their hearts swelling in their throats. They had found the missing X-Men, but weird tendrils now bind the captives, and they appear to feed off of them. A sight that makes Storm nauseous. She pauses for a moment, her eyes focused on marvelgirl. For in her mind, Storm could hear the faint whisper of a familiar voice when crying out to her for help. At Cyclops' frantic command, Storm and the other new X-Men quickly set their predecessors free, and just as they do, the arcane temple suddenly begins to crumble. Storm and her fellow X-Men manage to get outside to safety, but after the liberated X-Men come to, Angel scolds Cyclops for returning. He calls Cyclops a fool, and marvelgirl echoes his outburst, screaming that Cyclops had been used as bait. Angel, now in a sudden trance-like state, explains that this was all just a trap. Krakoa had released Cyclops like a Judas goat in hopes that he would come back for them and bring other mutants with him. Only days ago, the original X-Men had come to this island to look for a mutant, one of the most powerful mutants that Cerebro had ever detected. But the mutant was the island itself. It is that moment that Storm can sense it. Life. Crazed, hybrid-minded life. There was indeed a rawness about this island. It was just as Professor Xavier had described on their flight from Missouri to America. Krakoa Island was a living being that was cursed with requiring the consumption of mutant energy to sustain itself. And Xavier had just delivered it a very nutritious breakfast. Suddenly the ground shakes. The fallen temple rises out of the ground, and the entire island moves and takes a mammoth, humanoid form. Krakoa roars. The monster's lips do not move. They hear his voice inside their minds. Krakoa launches an all-out assault on the combined teams. The bulk of them hack and slash at the monster's roots. Yet despite the combined power of old X-Men and new, none of their attacks seem to affect the island.
Mutant!
Storm exclaims.
Our powers seem to have no effect on the monster. But we must fight.
Mere words could never begin to describe the sheer, unbridled savagery of the battle that followed. Meanwhile, over 4,700 miles north, With the island now weakening, Professor Charles Xavier regains his full telepathic link with all his X-Men, and instantly he projects his plan directly into Cyclops' mind. Then, Charles Xavier closes his eyes, steels himself, and concentrates. And Professor X telepathically joins the battle. Now it is a war fought on two fronts. For while Professor X wages deadly combat with Krakoa's crazed communal mind, Cyclops races to carry out his telepathic plan. At Cyclops' command, Storm's eyes turn white and luminescent, and she summons a wind to carry her into the sky. High above Krakoa, she hovers and prepares. For when Xavier recruited Ororo, he explained that he had a plan to defeat Krakoa, which included a female mutant of the then captured original X-Men, one with green hair and the power of magnetism. Slowly summoning the full fury of the Tempest, while simultaneously drawing lightning into herself, Storm then transmits those soothing electrical energies downwards and into the life, young, green-haired woman who waits anxiously below. Lorna screams in anguish as Storm's lightning reaches her physical limits, then exceeds them. For not only has the goddess Ororo instantly reactivated her mighty magnetic powers, but she then supercharges the potency of the mutant only known as lornadane.
Don't stop!
Lorna screams.
Whoever you are, I believe in you. We can do this together. Whatever you do, don't stop!
Soon Lornadane's screams are slain by the crackling roar of the thunderous downpour. That small amount of faith in the goddess Ororo is all she needs. And she then summons even more electrical energies into herself, and then down into Lorna. Meanwhile, back in New York, Professor X's telepathic assault suddenly begins to falter. Somehow, Krakoa was regaining its strength. For what Professor X had not planned on is that as the lightning of Storm's Tempest had empowered Lorna, its torrential downpour lent life back to Krakoa. Krakoa roars. And Krakoa attacks again. In the fray, Cyclops turns to find that the figure of Lornadane has become lost, and in her place, an incandescent tower of sheer magnetic force. Then he looks to the sky. High above Lorna, Goddess Ororo, the woman he only knows as Storm, has taken on the same form. Now, Cyclops roars, and he and his little brother Havoc combine their energies with those of Storms and Lornas, with almost indescribable force. Lorna's magnetic energies erupt downwards through 5,000 miles of ocean, through 4,000 miles of the Earth's ancient crust, down to the very molten center of the planet itself, where its effects are both immediate and violent. Krakoa cries out in agony as its humanoid form begins to crumble and dissolve back into the ground.
Her power is incredible.
Storm thinks as she descends.
She has to be a goddess, just as I.
Professor X's plan was working. Now, however, the 13 mutants only have seconds to vacate the crumbling island. And Storm and the X-Men, new and original members alike, run blindly for the ocean with Storm carrying Colossus.
We are too far to make it in time!
Storm exclaims. But like a well-trained soldier, the Iceman creates a raft. Promptly Storm and the desperate X-Men clamber aboard it, then hang on for dear life as the mutant powers of Cyclops, Havoc, Iceman, and Storm propel the makeshift vessel away from Krakoa with the speed of a hurtling hydroplane. As they speed away, behind them, the world convulses in carnage as the results of Lornadane's energy bolt become apparent at last. For her lightning-charged burst has cut across the planet's primary lines of magnetic force, severing them, effectively cancelling gravity around Krakoa. And the living island is dislodged from the Earth itself, and the spin of the globe does the rest, blasting Krakoa into the sky. And as it launches further into space, in Storm's mind, the entirety of the island, fauna and flora alike, seems to scream, dying, yet again, death. Suddenly, the raging waters of the Pacific Ocean are rushing to fill in the space Krakoa has just vacated, creating an instant whirlpool. A whirlpool which violently snatches Iceman's raft into its draft. And yet again at Cyclops' command, Iceman then covers the ice raft with an airtight dome. Voraciously, the great ice bubble is sucked into the wildly swirling ball. Inside, Storm, along with her teammates, are battered almost senseless against its cold walls. But Storm alone is quivering with nearly debilitating anxiety. She strains to stay silent, to endure. Her claustrophobia, the fear of small and enclosed spaces, is her secret and hers alone. And suddenly, they are gone. The seething waters swirl closed above them, and the sea calms. Then the huge gleaming bubble bursts the water's surface, and then itself is burst in turn by a beam of heatless, scarlet fury.
Oh, Goddess be praised!
Storm exclaims.
I can see sky, and we are all safe.
Quietly, Storm inhales, breathes, and calms the claustrophobic storm raging within her. These mutant strangers, she thinks to herself, these Xmen must never know of my weakness. Never. After boarding the Blackbird and flying off, the originals introduced themselves to the new recruits, who now seem to be finally getting along. And though battered and a little bloody, they were victorious nonetheless. And Storm and 12 other mutants all set course for New York. And it was on that flight that she and Jean first truly connected. However, today, at this moment, at Jeangrey's grave site, Ororo thinks back on the things that were to follow. And she wishes that the defeat of Krakoa was where this story ends. But, in fact, that was just the beginning.